Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
He said he gon' huff and puff and blow my mind up. You meet the island girl, she might dirty wind up.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I'd like to thank J23 for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. My guest today is Steve Spiro, Master Connector. Steve started his first company right out of college in advertising. Additionally, he holds a 4th degree black belt in karate and a 1st degree in jiu-jitsu. We might talk about that, including having his own karate studio. Steve contributes much of his success to a strong work ethic, a can-do, never-quit attitude, discipline, integrity, and fearlessness that he cultivated in the martial arts. Steve is a master connector, as I mentioned, and does a LinkedIn live broadcast every week called the Master Connector Show. He eventually pivoted from advertising into technology and is now a business automation consultant. I'm going to ask him about that because I'm not really sure I know what that is. Steve is big on self-development and loves to inspire people to get out of their comfort zone. Steve, welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
Well, I appreciate it, Deepak. It's great to be on here, and I just got to say it. It's Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming at you live and direct.
Awesome, awesome.
There we go.
So, Steve, I always like to ask, probably I'm going to make the assumption, most boys growing up, they don't inspire to be master connectors or business automation consultants. So go as far back as you want. What was your journey to getting to where you're at today?
I appreciate it. And I'm not going to talk much about the business automation stuff because it's highly unreferable and just very nichey. But yeah, I mean, Bronx guy, grew up shy and introverted, picked on, bullied, learning disabled, dyslexic, a lot of hangups, had more hangups than the phone company growing up. But eventually decided or discovered my dad had a liquor store, dissuaded me from going into that. So wound up going into advertising marketing, high school, college for that, got out, couldn't get a job, start a company. And you'll see that a theme in a lot of my life has been obstacles and overcoming obstacles and grit. So I started a company. We had an advertising agency in New York City, and it was pretty wild being a 22-year-old businessman. Also, parallel to that, as you mentioned, started training the martial arts, a couple black belts. My wife's a black belt as well. Interesting. And that's got all sorts of sets of stories and challenges that I've overcome there. But eventually, very illustrious advertising career. And it's at one point, the economy shifted, things dried up, and I was really out of work. But I had been introduced to a successful entrepreneur who challenged me. He knew I was shy and introverted. He said, Steve, I know you're shy and introverted, but you need to meet 3 strangers every day. And, listen, I'm not sure if you're listening where you're tuning in from, but in New York, you talk to strangers, you're going to get shot, kidnapped, or killed. But I did it, stretched me, got me out of my comfort zone, and started amassing a big network over time. Eventually got on LinkedIn. Now today I've got just about shy of 30,000 connections on LinkedIn and 20,000 contacts on my phone. It's crazy. I still talk to strangers every day, randomly, and make new friends and exchange contact information. It's wild. But people started asking me to speak, and so as I eventually transitioned over from the technology world, I was a copier salesman for a while on the evolutionary scale below the chimpanzee and the orangutan as the copier salesman. So I figured if I could do that, I could do anything. So eventually got into consulting, and as mentioned, do some of that as well. But really, my focus today, and I wrote a book as you pointed out, The Tao of a Master Connector. The subtext of that is the way an introvert became a master connector. And so I'm hired to be on stage across the world, and my goal is to be a beacon of light, to get paid to travel the world, speak and inspire, and be that beacon of light. And just love doing it. I appreciate it. Big topic I like to speak about today is breaking barriers for real, true human connection in this complex digital era. We're in a very connected world today, but we're very disconnected. The screen has created a barrier. So I talk about that. So that's the short version, the pretty long short version of my story.
No, I love it. I love it. A couple of nuggets there before we really get in. So you said your dad had a liquor store. He dissuaded you from doing that. My parents were in the hospitality industry. They had restaurants, bars, catering company. They dissuaded me from doing that. I'm a CPA by first profession. So yeah, that was interesting. I'm just wondering, as also both you and your wife having black belts, if you have to put boundaries around when you guys have arguments, so it doesn't derail into a battle.
It's funny. I mean, it's been wild. I mean, we're in a great place today, but we've had some interesting fights, arguments. I would make fun, and it's half fun, but if anyone has seen the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith, or I know there's
Sure.
series on Netflix on that now, or maybe Prime. But we at one point we had some construction at our house, and there was like missing ceilings and all sorts of stuff, and people were like, "Hey, what's going on here?" I'm like, "Hey, you ever watched the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith?" And they would awkwardly laugh, but yeah, no, we're good today. We're in a good place today, but it was there was some definite interesting things. And a little minor point, we were in the martial arts as we were dating, as we got engaged. We actually broke up at one point, not before, prior to the engagement. And my sensei, who was a sadistic, I'll just say SOB, um, he was he was basically he put us up against each other, knowing we had broken up and sparred each other during that time frame. That was interesting. But anyway, it's been a wild journey.
Awesome. And the other thing I just want to point out as well is that I love that go talk to three strangers. Probably a little bit different where I live here in Canada than than in New York City. But I don't do it anymore. But for like 15 years, I mentored at my alma mater undergraduate students, and that was something I would always say is like, go get out of your comfort zone, go talk to the stranger, talk to the person in front of you in line in Starbucks or behind you or on the bus, talk to the bus driver, whatever. Just get out there just to get them more comfortable. So I love that advice. And I just want to preface there. Many of the listeners know. Some of you might not know. We tend to foster dogs in our house, and so if you hear some barking in the background, I got a unruly guest this morning. So I just want to throw that out there. So, Steve, you mentioned earlier about the connection. So I know you talk a lot about connecting authentically. If you could just dig into that a little bit first. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, connecting authentically, there's a lot of people out there that are posers, right? And so people that are very self-focused. There's a lot of pitching. On LinkedIn, I'm big on LinkedIn, and I get a lot of these pitch slapping, right? That's pitch with a P. Not getting off color here,
Yeah.
but there's so much of that, and people are very much into themselves and look at get something. And so what I learned to be authentic, I found it break big barriers down when you share some of your vulnerabilities, right? So now obviously you and I are doing a podcast here, Deepak, but if you and we had a conversation, at least one, if not a few conversations prior to this. But I'll share about my dyslexia, about my being bullied as a kid, and I feel like it's a way that the barriers come down when you share of some of those vulnerabilities, and then people start to share as well, and they start to open up. I remember in during the COVID times, the lockdown times. I know Canada got hit really hard too, and you guys were really locked down for quite a while, even beyond what the rest of the world opened up. But I felt more connected during that COVID time than I'd ever before. And I was on like, I don't know, 8 or 9, 10 Zoom calls a day, it felt like, and talking to people and sharing those vulnerabilities, those pieces, those vulnerable pieces. And I would have people say, I'm telling you things that I've never told anyone. I've seen people would well up, people would actually start to cry. I'm like, wow, there's something here. And, I know Brene Brown is famous for her talk about vulnerability, but I think it's a little bit of a different spin. My spin is, hey, how can you really break these barriers down? And by sharing, people start to, share back, and the walls are down. So that's what I mean. It's just being able to share some things about yourself. And it's not random. You're not airing your dirty laundry. I'm purposeful about what I share about and be vulnerable about, but I feel like it's an incredible way in order to really connect with people.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I find, share authentically here. I have to admit, I don't, I think I've shared this before, maybe publicly or not. I don't know. But anyway, I'm sharing it now. Is the beginning of COVID was kind of for me personally, was a bit of a hustle. Like, okay, business has changed. Let's got to get online, do more stuff, and But then there was a lull when it was just like honestly, I was feeling very lonely. Like I live out on an acreage, and I got like lots of space. Like we can hang out in my backyard if you want to come over. But like people were so uh frightened. So a lot of my friends, like they didn't want to get out of their houses, whatever, which is totally fine. It's everyone to their own. But so there was a bit of a lull. There was actually probably a little bit of a depression going on for me for a while there, where I wasn't like there was no one around to connect with outside. My kids are home, and then they went back to school eventually, and then they're back home, and all that whole sort of thing. But finding that online community, and there's some common people that we know enjoy, and me joining their communities and meeting people. And now we're on the other side, and of course, I love personal connection, attending in-person events and masterminds, etc. But some of those friends that I made during that COVID period online are some of my greatest connections now that we talk regularly. I mean, via Zoom, but we talk regularly. So yeah, I love that point that you brought up. Steve, you also talk about being others focused, and I think I know what that means, but maybe for the audience, like maybe you could explain that.
One of my favorite books is The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and John David Mann. I've had Bob on our LinkedIn Live Master Connector show broadcast as well. And it's really, it's just a mindset. And it took a long time for me to shift because I was very self-focused. I kind of alluded to it. I was a broken human for many years. I was a broken man. I was just, because there was a lot of rejection and hurt, and it's not a woe was me story here. But when you're wounded, if you're a warrior, a lot of many times you're just, and probably a warrior is not a good example because they've been trained to battle through that. But the average person, when you're wounded, you think about self-protection. You're thinking about, if anyone gets near you, they're a threat. And, the more you show your wound, the more that they could, not to be graphic, but, if you've got a big gashing wound, somebody could stick something in there and make it even more painful, whatever. So I was just self-focused. The instinct for Steve, especially being an introvert and being a broken human, was to just stay to myself. And I wallowed in that weakness. I really did. And, the minute I started to get some healing and became others focused, I found that that the connection became strong. I became powerfully confident. But what it also did was it allowed barriers to come down. So to me, it's a combo, two-punch combo, if you will, right? Authenticity and being other focused to breaking those barriers down. But there's also the law of sowing and reaping. In my book, I talk about the secret of the corn, and you plant 3 or 4 or 5 kernel seeds of corn kernel seeds. Can't speak today, and you wait. There's seed time, progression time, there's harvest time, right? And you water, till the soil and fertilize and all that, and then eventually, when the season comes, a stalk of corn comes up, and there's 10 or 15 ears of corn on that stalk, and in each of those ears of corn are hundreds of kernels of seed of corn, right? And now from 3 or 4 or 5 pieces, seeds or kernels of corn, you get thousands. And so that's what happens. Not only the law of sowing and reaping kicks in, right? Where you give and then you eventually get back, right? You get back in abundance in the case of, sowing seed, kernels of corn, so to speak, right? So it's the same thing. The more I gave, the more I shared, the more I was others focused, things came back. I mean, this is not me bragging, but I've had the best financial years of my entire life, the last 3.5 years. And I believe it's because I've become others focused and looked to take my eyes off myself and give it to other people. And some of the relationships I've been able to establish have been incredible. And before, when I was me focused and sort of in self-protection mode, people just sensed that there was a kind of a wall, and I was very stoic. And as men in general, we are kind of programmed to kind of like not show emotion, not show our feelings, not share those vulnerabilities. And I think this is a message. Eventually, I'll do a TEDx, and in my TEDx topic title is, weakness, there's power. And I believe, you're a true man and a true human when you get to be vulnerable and be others focused and share those things and look to add value to other people. And I just enjoy being others focused. Love speaking about that on stage when I'm asked to speak.
Steve, you bring up 2 points here. I'm going to ask my next question. I want to tie a couple things together. So I love that, giving first to others, and you get so much more back usually when you do that first. A number of years ago, 3 years ago now, I was part of a networking event, and I offered something, a service to the entire group, and someone took me up on it, and then they were in return offered me something, and they were a bit of a shaman, but a bit of a healer, and they brought some I'll call it loosely personal development insights to me, and that led me down a path of personal development, which is ongoing, but was incredibly beneficial for me. So my question to you is, as much as you feel comfortable sharing, you talked about overcoming being broken, to use your terms. Like, what did you do? What were some of the modalities or techniques that you use that maybe the listeners can look into for themselves?
Sure. No, I'm happy to share in that. I mean, and there's no magic formula, and some of these things may help you, or I could just say these things helped me. So first thing is, a lot of reading and self-development and learning more about me. Having a mentor in my life was helpful as well. But there was a good and a bad to that, because my mentor, who's still my mentor today, and I love and appreciate him big time because he's changed my life. But his methodology was very kind of like head coach-ish, head football coach-ish, where he was sort of like, talking on, you should do this, you need to change this, you need to fix this. And unfortunately, when you're broken and wounded, all that did was make me feel like I was not worthy, and it didn't help the situation. I read a book called Wild at Heart. It was a great book, and it turns out that the book, unbeknownst to me, had something about a rite of passage that young boys have to go through. And because my dad was working all the time and he was also wounded and broken as well, I didn't have that rite of passage piece of it. So basically, that was a big part of it. I did a little bit of therapy, not down on that. There's a value in that. I didn't need to do a lot because I needed that therapist who I highly respected. It was my sister. I've used him for years, spoke highly about him over the years. And he basically validated me. And he said, Steve, because this is like the second or third visit at his office. And he's like, I've had a lot of people sit in that chair, the couch, and they're messed up. He said, I hear your story. I hear what you've done. And, you're amazing. And I just needed somebody to tell me I was amazing. So that was a big part of it. I went to a silent meditation retreat, and it was the first time, the only time I've been to something like that. And it was a great experience. And I just looked out in the window, and I saw a bird on a branch, and I'm like, it's okay. They're okay. I'm okay. You're okay. It's okay. And that was a piece of, I just needed to just realize that I'm okay. And it took some time. And what's interesting is I heard my mentor say this many times. He's like, if you eventually take your eyes off yourself and go help other people, he said, if you have a particular shortcoming, right? Maybe you're financially destitute, go help 5 people become, better financially. And all of a sudden your life is going to be better. Right. And, that might be the best example, because if you're broke, how could you teach people how to be financially better off? But he just said, take your eyes off yourself and go help other people. And when you finally start to hear, and this has happened to me multiple times today, which I'm so blessed about, but what I learned is true self-image is not what I think about myself. True self-image is what I understand you think about me, right? And so when you have people telling you, Steve, you've changed my life, you've made a big difference in me, I really appreciate you. When you have people telling, because you've done great work with them, it starts to raise your self-esteem and start to raise your belief in yourself. And that was a big part of it for me.
Amazing. I just want to underscore something to the beginning of that part is all modalities are good. Not all are going to work for every person, every type of therapy, et cetera. And I'd say if anyone's struggling with something, just find whatever help that resonates with you to get the help you want. So, Steve, you also talk about grit a lot and overcoming obstacles. Can you touch a bit more on what grit means to you, and how someone can apply grit to their life?
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about the martial arts, right? And I've had broken nose, split lip, multiple stitches on my face, and it would have been easy just to quit. And a lot of times that's what happens. People hit roadblocks, they quit. And I just kept going through it. And I started the martial arts, so not very talented, and I realized that by doing the work, staying steady, following my sensei, my mentor, and not quitting, I was going to succeed. And I passed everyone except for one person in the martial arts. And that was a good life lesson for me. Going through all these battles and things that, the challenges I went through, it was crazy. But it's some of the other things that I learned along the way is, I am dyslexic. And so I don't learn the way most people learn. I don't read instructions. My brain short circuits when I see instructions. It's like, but I've self-taught myself, right? Graphic designer, not to date myself, but when I came out of art high school and art college, looking to get into the art, side of the advertising industry, I wasn't really trained on a computer. There wasn't really, that was just starting to come out. Again, I know I'm dating myself here, but I learned all the programs. I self-taught myself all the programs, Illustrator and Photoshop. And I know today it's InDesign. Back in the day, it was Quark. But, and today I taught myself how to use Canva and all these things. And, just persevering through. And my attitude is, if there's a big boulder blocking my path, okay, I'm going to be creative. I'm going to think, okay, what can I do to, climb over it, dig under it, break it? Somehow I'm going to get through it. I'm just going to just keep at it. Because again, what I learned is, if you stay steady, do the work, and never quit, you're eventually going to succeed. You're eventually going to win. And so grit is just a big part of it, and not really focusing in on, oh man, this is hard, but just suck it up, right? The first three letters of the word success is suck. You're going to go through the suck to get through to success, right? And I just had to understand that. And I leveraged a lot of my martial arts experience in the early stages to be able to see that. And I saw that happen before my eyes, but it's happened in many parts of my life today.
That might be the title of our episode today, is the first three letters of success is suck. So that's awesome. Let's stay on this, everyone knows I'm all about health and helping people with their health, but this is not a health focused podcast. Outside of the martial arts, so you can't use martial arts, what does your morning routine look like, or what's a non-negotiable for regarding your health outside of martial arts?
Yeah, I mean, I wake up, there's prayer, and then, from that, I go ahead and I put on an audio book while I'm making coffee for my wife and myself, and make lunch for the day, and then whatever the ditch is, whatever. After that, I'll put on an audio book, not an audio book, an audio, stretching. After that, which self-talk during stretching, and jumping on a spin bike. And after that, about 15 minutes of spin, 220 push-ups, 220 sit-ups, all in a row. And then I'll get to some scripture, some spiritual reading, a little bit of creative visualization, and then I'll cap it off with a gratitude list. Think three things I'm grateful for, and that's it's typically my morning routine. I do post in the morning, so I have to put out a little positive message every morning. Post on LinkedIn, and connect with some people and through LinkedIn as well. So those are kind of like the morning. It's a pretty rigorous hour and a half to close to 2 hours morning, but it's worthy. It's worth it, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I love that. And I say to people too, and we don't need to go down this path, but some people think sometimes oh, spending so much time on yourself, and that's kind of selfish. You could be spending time with others or whatever. And I was like, no, we have to fulfill ourselves first so we can give to others. Because my routine, although mine's spread out a bit of morning, bit in the afternoon, bit in the evening, but yeah, I spend about 2.5, 3 hours. I call it self-care, my own self-care, and that includes all those type of things. Quick question: 220 push-ups, 220 sit-ups. Why 220?
That's the number I'm up to. And I could keep going. I really can. It's just timing. It's just time. I'm trying to I want to get a lot done. So, at one point I got to 240, but I mean, it's just time.
Okay,
That's all.
fair enough. Fair enough. As we come to a close here, Steve, shortly here, what is Actually, let me ask you this question first. Is there something that you wish you would have started earlier in your life? Or another way to put it, like if you could go back in time and tell some advice or something to your younger self, what would it be?
Great question. I get that a decent amount when I'm doing these kinds of things. I would say a few things. Number one, I would go back and say, get into self-development. I mean, I started the martial arts at 20. That began the journey. I should have started the journey way earlier. I wish I'd done, get into books and maybe some of the challenges to give myself some grace. Being dyslexic, reading was very torturous for me. But get into self-development early on, number one. Number two, find a mentor, find somebody who's in life where you want to be and so that you could duplicate what they do. Not somebody who has a good kind of theory, but somebody who is living what you want, the kind of life you want. The other thing I would do is get into connecting and networking and the power of networking. It just, it's all about not about what you know, it's about who you know. And last thing I would crystallize my vision, how I want to live, right? In today's world is such a major focus on the what and the how. Understand it's more about the who and the why. Who's in your life that's helping you move forward? Who do you surround yourself with? And secondly, why? In other words, many people pick the vehicle based upon it's cool. Well, that would be like saying, I want to get to Spain, so I'm going to pick a really cool car, but it's not going to get me to Spain. You got to pick the vehicle based upon what's going to be effectively get you to where you want to go. So if you understand the why, how you want to live, how you want your life to be, the vision of your life, then you can figure out the vehicle. So understanding the why is really, really important. So the who and the why, and then of course mentorship as well as networking. Those are the four main things I think I wish I could have gone back
Yeah,
and told myself.
and I love the why. I mean, that's so big, and I share that with people all the time. Whatever, in my case with my clients, it's some typically a health journey or a health change I want to be, but like, what is the why? What is the purpose or North Star guiding light? These type of things. So I love that you brought that up. Kind of a similar question, but if there's just be one thing, there's just one thing, one golden nugget that you could share with the audience, what would it be?
I mean, I just want to say, I wouldn't say it's a golden nugget, but I want to encourage you, if you're listening, I want you to understand you're amazing. You are a child of the Creator, child of God, whatever you want to call it, the universe, and you have incredible gifts inside of you. And you might be going through some stuff right now that might be tough, but understand again, if you don't quit, you win, and you have incredible gifts. And the world needs to hear about you. They need to hear from you. They need to understand what challenges you've gone through because your challenges will inspire many people. So just understand that you're special. You may not feel that way, but I believe you are. If you're listening to this, I don't know you, but I believe you are amazing. And I want you to understand that the reason I love being on stage and sharing is because I believe that we all have a story and we need to share that story to inspire other people. So your story needs to be heard and just believe that you're incredible and you could do it too.
I love that, Steve. I love that, and I think that's a perfect way to send us off today. So, Steve, I want to thank you for being on the Deepak Saini show. It was very such encouraging words today. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate the opportunity very much. So thank you, Deepak. It's an honor to be on with you.
Thank you. So we're going to throw it back to J23, who's going to guide us out with some music. Also, don't forget to check out today's show sponsor at the end. Everyone, thanks again for listening and watching the Deepak Saini show. Remember, exceptional results for the exceptional you. And thanks again, Steve, for being on the show. This episode is brought to you by Optimizer's Mass Zymes. This is digestive enzymes that helps you break down your protein, fats, starches, and sugars. I've been using this product for, over a year now, specifically in a protein-heavy meal, because I really want to break down my protein to make sure I get the amino acids that I need for maintaining muscle growth, maintaining lean muscle mass. Super important as we age. and all stages of life, really. So again, huge proponent of Masszymes. Check out the link below to see how you can get at least 10% off, if not more. Cheers.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company